out of Cleveland. You want to be a boss? That's how you be a boss. I did. I made a mistake. A better way. Is there a better way to start your day than by listening to some Tom Brady audio where he's dropping F-bombs to his good friend Jim Gray, who asked him, well, he just asked him a simple question, Dylan. Let's hear from the GOAT, Tom Brady.
Tom, you're leaving everybody guessing. You said you'll take your time. Do you have any type of a timetable as to what you might want to do regarding your football career?
Jim, if I knew what I was going to fucking do, I'd have already fucking done it. Okay? I'm taking it a day at a time.
I sense you're antagonized by the question.
You're scratching.
It's only the question that everybody wants to hear.
You're scratchy. I appreciate your asking. Thank you.
Oh, I'm high-fiving Tom Brady, and I'm high-fiving Jim Gray. That's the way guys talk. I'm sorry. I know we're supposed to feel bad about things we said 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 years ago or yesterday or we cussed, we did that. Stop it. That's the way dudes talk. It is. Hey, Jim, if I effing knew what I was going to do, then I would. That's what guys do. Now, I'm sorry. I was reading something. Pamela Anderson says Tim Allen flashed her 10 years ago. How many people has Pamela Anderson flashed? Honest to God, the world is insane. Guys are nuts. I'm not saying what he did was right or wrong. I don't know, but I know this. I've been flashed by women. I've dropped F-bombs in meetings. I've dropped F-bombs. That right. Can we play that again? I'm so fired up about this. This is just the way guys talk. It is.
Tom, you're leaving everybody guessing. You said you'll take your time. Do you have any type of a timetable as to what you might want to do regarding your football career?
Jim, if I knew what I was going to fucking do, I'd have already fucking done it. Okay? I'm taking it a day at a time.
There you go.
I sense you're antagonized by the question.
You're scratching.
It's only the question that everybody wants to hear.
You're scratchy. I appreciate your asking. Thank you.
Man, yeah, good for Tom Brady, good for Jim Gray. I mean, look, we don't live in bubble wrap. We don't. I'm sorry. We don't. And guys are nuts. Guys are insane. Guys are just crazy. So are women. Everybody's nuts. But we all, because of social media and cancel culture, we're all so daggone afraid. Oh, my God. 20 years ago. All right, I guarantee you, like 5 years down the road, here's my point. This is going to come back on Tom Brady. This is going to be like, oh, did you hear what Tom Brady said? Oh, my God, 5 years ago, I cannot believe what Tom Brady said. Okay. No, guys are nuts. Guys will swear. I told this story before. I brought in a parent who was complaining about my swearing, and I said, come on in here. We're going to go in the locker room, listen to your kid. This kid was MF-ing this, N-word that, and nobody could see us because there was this little area where we could walk in. I go, look, I'm just trying to speak the language. Now, I'm above it all, mostly, but once in a while, you got to drop the bombs to get kids to understand. Tom Brady just being a dude, and I don't care whether you like it. I don't care whether you don't like it. Guys are nuts. Tim Allen, 10 years ago, did this to Pamela Anderson. How many people Pam Anderson flashed? Just stop. I got stories upon stories of when I was single about 8 years ago of what women. Stop. I don't care. It's the world we live in. People will swear. People will flash. People will do stupid things. Speaking of stupid things, the Dallas Cowboys, you got to see this. Like, look, I understand that the Dallas Cowboys got beaten. I understand two interceptions by Dak Prescott. We all get it, right? We all understand. 2 interceptions, not great. But do you have to be heckled by your own people? Like, that's the question that I have. Do you have to be? Let's check out what the Dallas Cowboys official Twitter site said about Dak Prescott. This is not some fanboy site. All right? This is a Twitter site, the official Twitter site of the Cowboys. Let's read, shall we, kids? Dak Prescott gave away the ball twice in a narrow loss to the 49ers in a matchup the Cowboys had a chance to win if they didn't again generate self-inflicted wounds. Wow. Now, I got to tell you, if I'm Jerry Jones, I got to fire that person. Maybe Jerry Jones put it out there. But if I'm Jerry Jones, I got to say, hold on a second now. Now, I'm mad at Dak. I'm mad at the kicker. I'm mad at everybody. I'm mad at myself. I'm mad at the coach, the assistant coaches. I'm mad at everybody. But we cannot be putting things like that out. I'm sorry, but we cannot. Those things do not need to be out in public from us. Of course they're going to be in public. Of course they are. The Dallas Cowboys are, quote, America's team. Turn on any one of these channels. You can go on down the line from ESPN to Fox to NFL Network. Every single channel will at some point today, including us, talk about Dak Prescott and the interceptions that he threw. They just will. I'm sorry. So you don't need to do it from your own Twitter account. Can we put that out there again? Do you mind? I'm going to show you something in this. Not only did they put it out there, not only did they hashtag it, but on the bottom, Dak on loss to 49ers. Unacceptable, 100% on me. So they've got Dak admitting to what they wrote on top. Now, don't give Dak credit for saying 100% on me. You know, you get no credit for that. You know, it's like a player used to say, my bad. Well, yeah, I used to look at him and go, yeah, who else threw the ball into the stands? I didn't throw it. He didn't throw it. Yeah, so you don't even need to say my bad. We all seen it. Well, it isn't 100% on Dak Prescott. Of course it isn't, but he is the quarterback. He is the easy target. He is the guy asking for millions and millions and millions and millions and millions. So, of course, it is going to be on him. And good for him for saying it, but when you act like an idiot, and we've seen this in other areas, you just don't get to apologize and everything's fine. You don't just get to say, hey, guess what? Nah, it's on me. Oh, well, then if it's on you. But the Dallas Cowboys, you cannot do that. Coming up, I'm going to tell you about an organization that would never do that, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals. Their center, Teddy Karras Jr., his dad, Ted Karras Jr., family friend, coach, national champion coach at Marion University here in Indianapolis. Great football player. He's going to tell you what makes Joe Burrow special and what's going on with the Cincinnati Bengals, and he'll give you an insight like you've never heard. Fran Fraschilla is going to join us, and we're going to talk some college hoops. You Indiana fans, we're going to talk nice about Indiana, as we should. Then Armando's going to take us all the way across the NFL. Did you see this? There is a saying in the world that we live in, and it's a simple saying. Go woke, get broke. Or get woke, go broke. However you want to say it, it doesn't matter. I have a saying, the stuff we worry about in this world, the stuff we worry about fascinates me, right? The Kardashians fascinate me because we're so worried about the Kardashians. Well, M&M's apparently had a problem. M&M's went woke. M&M's, yes, the candy. You know, I have a story. Went to the M&M store, big right there on Times Square. I didn't know you just couldn't take a handful. I thought I'm in the store. You know how you pull it down, you put it back. I just grabbed a handful. Guy from the back goes, hey, you got to pay for those. I didn't know I'm that kind of stupid. My kids today will still laugh about that. They're like, Dad, do you remember when you just grabbed M&M's? I go, yeah, I didn't know. So M&M's, the candy, decided to, I don't understand, go woke with a green M&M. Who knows? Who cares? Look at this. This is a release from M&M's. Yes, M&M's on Twitter. America, let's talk. In the last year, we made some changes to our beloved whatever, candies. We weren't sure if anyone would even notice. We definitely didn't think it would break the internet, but now we get it, even a candy. Candies, whatever, polarizing, which is the last thing Eminem wanted since we're all about bringing people together. Therefore, we've decided to take an indefinite pause from our spokes candies. In their place, we are proud to introduce a spokesperson. America can agree on the beloved Maya Rudolph. We are confident Miss Rudolph will champion the power of fun to create a world where everyone feels they belong. Just shut up. Just shut up. What is that? Just shut up. Like candy. You can't just go get a bag. You know, it used to be melts in your mouth, not in your hand. Any of you remember that? Any of you remember that ad, that glorious ad? Now we got to worry about M&M's being woke. Not M&M being woke, M&M's being woke. The crap we worry about in this world. You know, I've said this forever. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Now, people will say to me, well, that's not true. Well, that's not true. They do this in this country. No. Here's why we, the United States, America, us, we are the greatest country ever. Why people come across boats, why people risk death to come here. Because we are so great that we can worry about M&Ms. That's right. Think about that. You think in Jerusalem they care about M&Ms? I mean, seriously. Do you think in the Middle East? Do you think in Dubai? Do you think in China, Japan? Name a country. You think they give a rat's about M&Ms? And I got to tell you, that little post there from M&Ms, that little post drew over 1 million responses. Now, that's the crap we worry about. There have been over 3,100 tweets about M&Ms in the last hour. 42.4 million views. 42.4 million views. I like what Ben Collins said. Ben Collins is a guy, I don't know who he is. Apparently he's on NBC News. All right? He's a big wheel. He's got 391,000 Twitter followers, but he said, I'm moving to a shack in the forest and I'm no longer participating in society. So Tony Poznansky, who bitches about everything, I know that name, let's take the candy out of this. Your advertising was based on supporting women. You are now backing down from it because a conservative talk show host doesn't like supporting women. Listen to that. Is there anything more Twitter than that? Is there anything more Twitter than a guy, Tony, sign up for his newsletter? Okay. He is mad that somehow, I don't even know, the New York Times, how M&M's found itself in the cultural wars. You know what the greatest thing ever for M&M's might be? This. M&M's don't need this. M&M's don't need any of this. They don't need nothing about this. They need nothing. But M&M's went woke. I hope M&M's doesn't go broke because I dig on M&M's. All right, let's talk Patrick Mahomes, high ankle sprain. Let me tell you something about a high ankle sprain, and Teddy Karras, who played for the Washington Redskins, will tell us all about it. Hopefully we get him here in a minute, but let's talk high ankle sprain. There's low-grade ankle sprain, there's an ankle sprain, and then there is the high ankle sprain. The worst is the high ankle sprain. The high ankle sprain is that ankle sprain where you literally cannot put any pressure whatsoever on your foot. It's not only the ankle. The ankle hurts like crazy, but it is right down into your foot, and it's one of those where you go like this. All right, here's the ground, and here's your foot. All right, this is your foot, here's the ground. You go, oh, God. Oh. Ankle sprain science. One thing I know about, look, you got to understand, 10 years I was a head coach at Bowling Green. 7 of those years, we lost our 2 best players. 5 of those years, I lost my 3 best players. And still ended up over 500. Take that, foos. But anyway, I know from injury. I know about ACLs. I know about ankle sprains. And I got to tell you, here's the deal. It will not be healthy. Like, just understand right now, Patrick Mahomes' ankle will absolutely not be healthy. It won't. It'll be painful. But the one thing you can do with an ankle sprain is you can shoot it up, you can tighten it up, and if, and I'm sure he will, do everything that he can possibly do. He will, ladies and gentlemen, play. Not as well, but he'll play. The great Ted Karras joins us. And when I say great, we only allow greats on this show. Ted Karras, national champion coach at Marian University, started the program, built it from nothing, had no practice field. Next thing you know, they're winning national championships. He is back at Marian because they are smart enough to understand greatness. You know his son, Teddy Karras Jr. He, I believe, and I know he is, captain of not only the offensive line of the Cincinnati Bengals, Who Dey, but also captain of the team. Teddy joins us now. Super Bowl champ Ted Karras joins us now. Teddy, I know this. I know you've dealt with this. I was just explaining the science, my friend, of a high ankle sprain. That's a bad boy. He won't be the same, but I'm guessing he'll be able to go, talking about Mahomes. What's your experience with the high ankle sprain?
Yeah, they're tough injuries, but this is the time of year that you have to tough them out. So, yeah, it's going to be, a lot of guys are dinged up. It's the AFC Championship, Lamar Hunt trophy on the line. It's go time. We got to tough it through and play it best we can.
Teddy, I want to go back to this summer. You came over, first time I'd really talked to you since your son went to Cincinnati, and the first thing you talked about was your son, Teddy Karras Jr., and his relationship with Joe Burrow and what a dude Joe Burrow was. Walk us through that, will you?
Well, absolutely. So when Ted got to Cincinnati in the spring, he's kind of a social guy, and he likes to bring guys in the setting, outside of football. So one of my first, and I got to be in on this one, we had a Memorial Day cookout. So I was a cook. I was a grill master, but we cooked some chicken, some sausages. We had 12 Bengals over, and we decided to play a game of pig. Usually in our gatherings, there's some type of competition, Double D. So he has a full court. We broke up 6-6. The final four in pig consisted of me, Joe Burrow, Joe Bocci, and one of Bocci's friends. And here we are. Everyone's looking at us. Joe Burrow proceeds, Double D, to step behind the three-point arc, way behind, bop 3 in a row, beat all of us. He's the ultimate competitor. I didn't know what to say about it, but I did see Joe at practice 2 weeks later. I said, Joe, I'd really like a rematch. He looked at me and said, Coach, only if you want to lose. That's how he rolls.
I like it. I like it because Joe Burrow backs up what he says, and it looks like, you can tell me I'm wrong, but it looks like your son, others, everybody kind of plays off of it. It's kind of contagious what Joe Burrow does.
Absolutely. And he's Joe Cool, and he's ready to go every day. Practice field, meeting rooms, everything. He's an undeniable leader.
Your son comes in. He's the center. The season doesn't start out great for the offensive line, but you coach for a long time. There are certain units, it just takes a minute, right? Now they've had some injuries, added 2 more guys. Walk me through what this offensive line, which dominated the Buffalo Bills, what this line has been through.
Yeah, well, offensive line usually takes the longest of any segment group in football. And, yes, they brought 3 free agents in. And they played well, not at the beginning. That was a little bit rough, but they gelled throughout the season. Then we had some injuries. Lyell's out. Kappa's out. Here comes Adeniji. Here comes, Jackson Carman. Here comes Max Sharping this week. And I credit Frank Pollock for making sure everyone was ready from the get-go and continuing to coach those guys throughout the season. And they just did a hell of a job on this past weekend. Unbelievable. Really did great. Couldn't be more proud of them because, we watch a lot of the film after the games too, Double D. That's our tradition. Some of the guys come over and we'll watch the All-22 and the tight film. And it was just a thing of beauty last week for the O-line.
They they basically went into the snow and, snow plowed them. I'm right. It was like freaking, I don't know. It was literally in the run game, at least for the Bengals, it was literally like 5 guys just acting as a snowplow, pushing people back and out of the way.
Yeah, it was snowy. It was cold, Ted said. I mean, they were wet the whole game. It was just a classic battle, and I'm so glad that we could come out on top in Buffalo.
For those of you that don't know, Teddy Karras, the name Karras is legendary. His father, Ted, won a world championship with the Chicago Bears pre-Super Bowl. Ted won a Super Bowl with the Washington Redskins, and Teddy Karras Jr. won 2 Super Bowls with the New England Patriots. All right, so your son, I love this. Actually, my friends in Nashville, where now, because of this show being in Nashville, I have a bunch loved it too, but Junior's walking off the field, baby, and he lets the entire city of Nashville have it. That's the region in him coming out.
That's a little bit of the region. I had a lot of former players say the head bob was a little for me, but what happened there, Dan, was this. I mean, they're going to kneel it out 3 in a row. All right, and I've seen subsequent games, other teams, there's a little bit of respect. We get you want to take 1 shot at us, but they took 3 shots low, and then Simmons going to come out at the last play with a punch to the face that landed. So Ted could not go back into the handshake line after that and let it loose. And actually, from that point forward, I don't believe Tennessee won another game.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. There he is.
No,
There's the man right there. He was. Remember, I told this story yesterday. You guys came over. Teddy's in the pool, and he's drinking like 1,000 beers. And I looked at him. He's sitting in the corner, standing in the corner, and we're laughing. I go, "Hey, yo, you've been drinking beers for about 3 hours. Where are you peeing, big boy?" He goes, "Hey, I've never peed in a pool." Hey, and then I read the other day he was talking about Joe Burrow, and I want to go back. I want to go back to coaching. You make Ted, who's a free agent, a captain. You got Joe Burrow. The wide receiver is unbelievable, the whole deal. But Zach Taylor, who, going backwards before the run halfway through last year, this dude was on the hot seat. Talk about, as a coach, what you see out of Coach Taylor and the Bengals.
That's a great one. Well, and Ted has a good perspective, too. And I do, just watching from Bill Belichick, in different organizations he's been in. They're all great, but everyone has their different style. And the one thing about Zach Taylor, he has a calming presence about him. Ted says he's really good on scheduling. He's apt to give you 2 days off here towards the end of the season. Some coaches aren't doing that. He, takes input from the team. I just think he has this presence of calmness that I want to try to get towards as a coach, because I've never really been that way. But after observing him, I mean, his scheduling, the way he relates with his players, obviously, and he was on the hot seat. But sometimes it takes time in a program, but in this day and age, at almost any level of football, you don't get that time. So it was really nice to see that he got that time and is paying dividends for the Bengals for sure.
What made Ted want to come to Cincinnati?
Well, he was wanted. He bet on himself the past 2 years. He has rookie deal in New England for 4 years, bet on himself for a year in Miami. And then he went back to the Patriots for a 1-year deal again, and then he got a 3-year deal to go with Cincinnati. So that's one thing, being wanted. Second thing is the Joe Burrow factor and the team. We're a winning team. He wanted another chance to, get another ring. He's actually in his 4th AFC championship in 7 years. And, and then also, I mean, heck, man, the proximity, since he's only 2 hours away, man, from Indy. So we have big gatherings at the house after every game. A lot of friends, family come down. It's just a great organization. He's truly, blessed to be there.
Yeah, but, I get it's close and it's nice being with family and friends. But every time I followed you, all I saw was pictures of you deep sea fishing and catching these massive fish in Miami. You know what I mean? So I'm like, yeah, Cincy's great. The Ohio River's right there. But damn, you don't get the same fishing that you do in
We
Miami.
do not, but he kept his house in Fort Lauderdale, so we could get it when we want to, So yeah, but it's a great organization. One game away from the Super Bowl, baby.
Hey, last thing before I let you go. Tell people where Teddy lived with other linemen in New England, whose house he was across from, and that the light that was on that would come on.
Yeah, he lived across the street from the old Aaron Hernandez house. It was unbelievable. Joe Judge actually lived right next door to Aaron Hernandez, and they had his house for rent. Him and Joe Tooney, speaking of the Chiefs coming up here, lived together for 4 years directly across. The Erie light we'd look at, and yeah, it was North Attleboro.
The light was on top, right? The light was light up here or something.
There was a little light on once in a while in there. I never stepped foot on the property. I just looked at it from a distance. But I used to send you pictures once in a while.
I know. You're like, oh man. All right, baby. Let's go, Marion. You're back in the saddle. You got the shirt on. You're back in the office. Look, you did it once. I assume we'll do it 2 or 3 more times. We'll win a little national title here. That's the goal, right?
Well, that's the goal. Yeah, I think we created a monster back in 12. We won the first one. They've won 3. Another sports, another in football. So now that's the goal. It's a whole different world, though. Double D had nothing like this to sell on campus. They did an excellent job of upgrading facilities, weight room, training room, dorms. So I'm really fired up. Been here less than a month. Our recruiting class is going great, and I'm really fired up for the opportunity.
Hey, man, have a great weekend. I know you will. Good luck to you and Junior, and the whole crew, man. Thanks for coming on, Ted. Appreciate you, my friend.
I appreciate you, Double D. We'll talk soon.
All right. That's the great Ted Karras Jr. His dad, legend. The Karras name, legend. Alex Karras, Ted Karras, Teddy Karras, Super Bowl champs, like all of them. I don't know if Alex won. I don't think he did. But then you heard 4 years out of 6, Teddy Karras Jr. in the AFC Championship. And look, these guys are leaders, man. These are tough dudes. These are personality guys. These are leaders. And if you're a kid and you want to go play college football, you got to check out Marion University here in Indianapolis. There's unbelievable things going on. And my friend Ted Karras Jr., he started this. I mean, he was practicing where they didn't even I don't even know if they had a field. He was down by some river. He's getting, players got to remove rocks. And next thing you know, he's such a good coach and recruiter and tactician that he ends up winning a freaking national championship from a place that had nothing. And this is what I like. Coming up, I got more headlines for you. Fran Fraschilla is going to join us. Armando's going to join us. I got to tell you, there's some of the craziest stuff that's going on in our world right now, and I'm going to hit on it when we come back.
And how long after 9/11 does your unit, the 160th SOAR, which is the most elite helicopter pilots in the world, how long does it take for you guys to figure out, okay, a plan's being set in motion, we're going to Afghanistan? Was it within days? Was it within weeks?
It was within hours.
Within hours.
So we drive back that night, the battalion commander and I, and the next morning I'm sent down in a 15-passenger van with a bunch of other planners to Tampa, Florida. And we're to plan America's response, as far as the rotary wing side of it. And by October 3rd, I was in the country of Uzbekistan preparing to do personnel recovery for the bombing campaign that was about to kick off.
And this is depicted in the movie 12 Strong. Correct me if I'm wrong, where you guys are going to fly in from Uzbekistan. This is what's known as the horse soldiers. This is going to kind of be the first wave. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah. So initially we're there for, I want to say about 2 weeks of bombing. And then there is no further plan that we know of. And then all of a sudden, 5th Special Forces Group rolls in. Their commander takes over the task force. We were in Task Force Dagger out of K2 Air Base, Karshi-Kanabad. And he wants a briefing on our capabilities. And so we sat down and we started talking to him about, the mountains and the distances that we can or can't fly, the way the weather is and all these things. And he's like, gee, I wish somebody had told us that ahead of time, and ironically, when I was in Tampa, they were one room over and nobody ever connected us, because it just wasn't considered important. But now it was, especially as they heard that, the mountains were, 20,000 feet and that the weather was horrible and all these things. And so we tell them what we can do. And he goes, well, you guys are going to start doing a UW campaign, which is unconventional warfare. That's where you link up individual operational detachments or ODAs up with factions of the Northern Alliance, which were the allies that we were trying to coordinate with. So it went from there.
It's interesting. Daniel Snyder is selling, or at least starting the process with the Bank of America to sell the Washington Commanders. I don't know if you saw this, but Omar Moreno, or the Moreno family with the Los Angeles Angels had started the same type process, but backed off yesterday and said, look, we're not going forward. Clay Travis, our leader, our hero, our sensei, made an interesting deal. Maybe Bezos will sell the Washington Post and buy the Washington Commanders, Jeff Bezos. Wouldn't that be awesome? For those of you that don't know, Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. Look, if I were Jeff Bezos and I could buy basically anything that I wanted, I got to believe it would be one heck of a lot more fun to own the Washington Commanders than it would be to own the Washington Post. I mean, think about the cretins in the media that you have to deal with on a daily basis as the owner of the Washington Post. You got the worst of the worst working for you. I mean, let's make no mistake about it. There is nobody in the world that is worse than media folk, particularly print writers, my lovely wife. The deal is simple. If I'm Bezos, I don't know if I want to sell one for the other. I don't know that it's possible that I could keep one, but I do know this, and I will say this until I drop dead. How much fun would it be to own the Cubs, the Commanders, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Philadelphia Phillies, the Pittsburgh Pirates? I think it would be so much fun. If I were Jeff Bezos, I would do one thing and one thing only. Two things. One, I'd buy. Two, I'd sell. I'd buy the freaking Commanders and have a great time, and I'd get rid of that newspaper. As Jim Banks said, newspapers are a dying industry. You can't read them. You can't believe them. You don't know them. So get rid of the Washington Post and buy the Commanders, Bezos, or keep them both. Hey, what the heck? It might be fun. Karine Jean-Pierre puts her foot in her mouth trying to defend Biden over classified documents. Now, I have respect. Maybe I'm the only one that isn't a liberal that has respect for Ms. Pierre. I'm going to tell you why. Jean-Pierre. Because that's my dream job. I'm not going to lie to you. This job here is the best job I've ever had. But if they called me tomorrow, and there's very few jobs that I would do this. Like if they called me tomorrow and said, hey, we want you back as an analyst on ESPN. No. Look, you could only do radio. I already made that decision. But if they said you get to be the press secretary for the President of the United States, those of you that are longtime listeners to my show know my answer to that. That, ladies and gentlemen, is my dream job. Period. There was a time, going back Marlon Fitzwater et al., that I could name you in order. In fact, I'm dying to get Ari Fleischer on this show. I'm dying to get Fleischer. He's like my hero. We read a tweet from him yesterday. So, Jean-Pierre, I'm like, all right. I got respect for the job. I always wanted to tell Helen Thomas, sit your little. But you cannot continue, I would not continue, just simply lying about what in the Sam Henry is going on in this country. Let's take a little listen, and we got two videos back to back from Miss Jean-Pierre.
Another question on the documents. You have said, though, from this podium many, many times over the last 2 weeks that this president takes the handling of classified material very seriously. And yet we continue to learn about more documents being found and discovered at his home, including now some that go back decades to his time in the Senate. So why should the American people believe that this president takes classified material seriously and the handling of it?
Look, the American people heard from the president directly on this when he was asked by your colleagues at least twice now about how he sees this process. And he was very clear with the response of what we're currently seeing. And he says, I take this very seriously. He said, I didn't know that the documents were there. And look, I think as it relates to the American people and the president standing with the American people, it is going to be up to them to decide how they see this president. Look, this is a president that came into office, 9 million people had lost their jobs. The unemployment rate was 6.3%, and hundreds of thousands of small businesses had closed their doors. And in the past 2 years, we've created nearly 11 million jobs. The unemployment rate is at a record low at 50-year record low. In the last 2 years were the best years for small businesses applications on record. We talked about that last week, just from here. The president has built the most significant legislative record since LBJ. Let's not forget, there's a CHIPS and Science Act, the bipartisan infrastructure legislation. I just walked through what he's going to see next week when he's traveling to Baltimore and also New York City. The Inflation Reduction Act, which is going to deal with lowering costs. So the president has been in office for the last 2 years focusing on the American people. Here, that has been answered for my colleagues. Anything else? My colleague's going to speak to all of you in just a few minutes, a few moments, and you can ask more intel and detail
One
questions.
thing you just said. You just said the president said that he did not know the documents were there. I'm not actually sure he has said that clearly. Are you saying the president did
Well,
not
he
know
said
that
he was
any of the
surprised.
documents-
He said he was surprised.
Any of the documents.
He said he was surprised. I'm just going to leave it there, and I'm going to refer you to the White House counsel's office. I'm just repeating what he said, and he said.
What you just said. You said he did not know the documents were
He
there.
said he was surprised.
It's glorious. Like, you don't answer the question. You talk about an economy that you ruined, and now because, well, the American people will always build back, now you're a hero for building it back. I saw yesterday our boy Biden put out, well, you know, gas is down, really? So what's the right word? Blame it on Ukraine, Putin. When it goes up, you take credit when it comes down, but it's not down to where it was before you took office. Inflation isn't close. People are losing their ass. $800 per person you lose almost every day. I think it's absolutely delicious how this lady, the press secretary, gets up every day and has to defend this clown show. Honest to God, I think it's glorious. It is a skill that I think I have. I do. I think I possess the skill. Now, once in a while, I'd be like, yo, Prez, you're going to have to get rid of me because I can't go with that. I used to tell Bobby Knight that, yo, come on now. I mean, let's come up with a better plan here if we're going to BS the troops. I mean, let's go. But you got to admire that she stands up there every day with her soft little voice and lies like hell. Good for, hey, look, that's the job. And that's the job I want. She's trying every day. She's working it every day. She's hustling every day. People are infuriated by her, and good for her. She's trying, man. She's working it. And I like it every day. I get a kick out of it. And then people lose their minds on it. What are you losing your mind for? That's her job. Athlete trouble. Now, I'm probably going to say something here that's going to make people mad, but first, let's look at Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr. came out of college, and he's been pretty good in the NBA with the Denver Nuggets. His brother, Coben Porter, was arrested over the weekend, suspicion of vehicular homicide. He's a member of the University of Denver basketball team. Now, I got to tell you, I don't make fun of this ever. I think this is horrific. I think these are awful things. I don't like this even a little bit. You know, I had a friend. I got a story for everything. I had a friend that this happened to. And I went to the trial. And it was one of the saddest things because obviously my friend did not try to injure anybody, but he did. Now, in Coben's case, he was suspected of DUI. He smelled of alcohol when he ran a red light and he crashed into another vehicle. He was driving 50, ran a red light downtown, crashed into a driver, Katerina Rothman, and she was killed. Now, you're going to have to live with this your entire life. Bloodshot, watery eyes, slurred, mumbled speech, strong odor of alcohol. He also had a Bud Light paper wristband on his left wrist. You know what those are. That means you're at some Bud Light thing or that's entrance to a party. A lot of bad stuff going on. You know, at some point, as we get to the University of Georgia, some point people are going to ask a question, what's a football player doing with a recruiting young lady at 2:30 in the morning? That's going to be asked. Now, who knows? I'm not suspecting anything, but the coach in me, that's the first thing I thought. But speaking of Georgia football player Rara Thomas has been arrested on false imprisonment and misdemeanor battery, family violence. Wouldn't let a young lady out of his dorm room. What's going on in Georgia? I mean, what are we doing? I mean, seriously. I mean, look, here's the deal. I get it. When I went to Indiana, it was after a national championship, and, man, the stories were crazy. But here's the deal. I'm going to go back to that wreck. Apparently, the New York Post is reporting Devin Wilcox, some of his Georgia teammates, were exiting a strip club 15 minutes before. Look, maybe he called for a ride home. I don't know. But this is just tragic, all this stuff that's happening. Deaths. And now it's tragic for a young lady that wasn't allowed out of a dorm room at the University of Georgia. Now, what are we doing here? Like, I get it. One of the worst things that, well, let's put it this way. One of the worst things that you can possibly do, if not the worst thing, is violate a woman. Now, you can hit on a woman at a bar, you can do it, but you can't detain, you can't assault, hit. I always had a policy, and I think I've talked about this. This is a no-brainer policy. If you do anything to a woman as a Bowling Green basketball player, you're going to be kicked off the team. So this guy here, decides that he is going to bruise a woman's bicep, abrazins on her shin, which people think, well, he may have kicked, stood in front of her dorm room telling her she could not leave. The felony charge of false imprisonment can carry a sentence up to a decade in prison. It's very serious. Now, we're thinking we let him be innocent, but when you have bruised a woman, kicked a woman, allegedly, and then not let her out of a room, pretty serious. Now, I would assume, again, this is just based on talking to my sister, who's 25-year prosecutor, Marion County, dealt with a lot of stuff, domestic violence prosecutor. This will all work itself out, and I don't imagine the kid's going to spend 10 years in prison, but something needs to happen here to teach him and others a lesson. Now, let's be honest. This needs to stop, and we're going to show you a video coming up here in a minute by Deion Sanders. Speaking of Deion Sanders, he flipped the top recruit, Cormani McLean, from Miami, and he is instilling positive culture changes caught on video. Now, I'm going to play the video, but this isn't new. Like, I'll listen to people tell me that I'm a bad coach, blah, 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 but I'll tell you this, my players acted right, and when they didn't, they were gone. I had a couple that didn't, and they were gone. Here's a Deion Sanders talking about respect for women. I wish more coaches would have the stones to do this. Let's roll a little bit of Deion.
One thing that I don't condone, Jennifer, come on. One thing that I don't condone is disrespect for a woman. and calling the woman out of her name. So when you pass by these beautiful young women, I don't know if they grace you to call them by their name or their title. You find out. To not be mistaken, I would say ma'am, until they check you and say, I'm not that old, okay? But be courteous, be gracious, and be polite. And if there's any dysfunction or obstruction with your girlfriend, fiance, or whoever, with any abuse, that's it. It's over. Don't call me, don't have your mama call me, don't call Rick. It's a wrap. You understand that? We're going to respect our women wholeheartedly. Thank you, ladies.
That's exactly what I would tell my players. It's exactly. In fact, when I was the head coach at Indiana for 7 games and the idiots that were in the program, I brought all the women and all the staff, academic staff, I put them on a little stage we had, and I told the idiots, any one of you disrespects any of these people in any way doing their job, you're out of here. That's what you're supposed to do as a coach. You're not supposed to make excuses. Now, the interesting thing for Deion Sanders is going to be this. What happens, because it's going to happen, when a really good player or star player violates that right there. That's why a lot of college coaches don't put rules on. Coach Knight always had 2 rules. 1, don't respect me or the program. That's 1. 2, don't respect your family. Don't disrespect your family, excuse me. So what happened was he left that open, right? He left that open and ambiguous. So what, if that was disrespectful, I can punish you. But when you make steadfast rules, now it's going to be interesting for Coach Prime. What happens if, or when, if he's there long enough, it's going to happen. I liked what he said, don't even call me. We had a player at Indiana. Got involved in a hassle. I'll never forget. Got an all-night flight back. First thing, phone call. So-and-so, I'm not going to say his name because he's turned out to be a great dude. But he got in a hassle with a girlfriend. He was in jail. Called Coach Knight. He said, he's gone. He's done. Goodbye. He goes, well, he didn't say that. He said, give me the facts. Let me talk to the cop. Let me find out what happened. Done. Now, people are going to say innocent till proven guilty, maybe. But you have, the standard is the standard, right? The standard is the standard. And so many of these programs go, well, you know. I mean, how about compare what Deion Sanders did right there with what Nick Saban did with the wide receiver who smacked the young lady for no reason at all. Compare those two. Nick Saban played the guy who hit a woman the next game. Why? Because Nick Saban doesn't care about hitting a woman. It's just like Steve Kerr doesn't care about violence in the workplace. They don't care. Here's the deal. It's easy to say stuff. Easiest thing in the world. And everybody knows how to do it. Everybody. But the truth of the matter is, what happens when you're really put to the test? Saban showed himself to be a phony, a fraud. Kerr showed himself to be a phony or fraud. See, unfortunately, guys like me that showed themselves to be real and kick guys off are now doing shows out of their basement. But this is better. At least I always look in the mirror and never lose a moment's sleep. Compare that with frickin' Nick Saban. All right, this I like. Derek Wolfe killed a large mountain lion in Colorado. Derek Wolfe is a former Broncos tight end. Now, this mountain lion had been a pain in the rear end in his neighborhood or among people. So what did Derek Wolfe do? Derek Wolfe said, no, I am going to kill you. You are not going to. No. Bother me. And of course, trolls attacked him. A 200-pound mountain lion was killing women's dog, living under her porch. A 200-pound mountain lion. Now, I want you to think about that just for a second. And little trolls are mad at him. Good. Good for you little trolls. God bless you. Be mad at Derek Wolfe. There's a picture. He said, I'm going to eat him. People are mad at him. You know what? God bless you. See, we need more heroes. You know, I'm so tired. There's a video going around, and we're not going to show it, of a bunch of idiots in Chicago going around killing people. That's who you should troll. You should troll the mayor of Chicago saying, why are you allowing this? You don't troll a guy who killed a mountain lion that was eating dogs, taunting a community, not taunting, ravaging a community. But hey, in our world, that's what we do. It's peak Twitter. Well, you know. Yeah, you know. I mean, he killed a mountain lion. I love the fact that he said, yeah, not only am I going to do it, I'm going to eat it. He hunted it down and killed a mountain lion. God bless him. God bless him. Interesting news, not surprising news. You know, you go, you coach. You get fired. You go to Alabama and coach, and you get cleansed. Holy water gets doused on you. You go into the baptism bin. They baptize you. Bill O'Brien is the next man to do this. Bill O'Brien, great coach by everybody tells me, went from Penn State after the Joe Paterno mess. He went to, the Houston Texans, did pretty good there. Got rid of DeAndre Hopkins. The media went nuts. The mad crapper gets him fired. The team is in disarray. Where does he go? He goes to Alabama, where he does well, wins a national championship, does all good stuff. Now he's back with New England. Now he's going to be the offensive coordinator. And I got to tell you, it's a year too late. It's a year too late. This should have happened last year. You can't have old pencil neck Patricia be the guy calling plays when he's a defensive coordinator. New England was a mess. It didn't matter what Bill Belichick said. See, here's the deal. Bill Belichick, without the physical abuse, is going down the same road Bob Knight went. Bob Knight at Indiana thought he was smarter than everybody, and he, ladies and gentlemen, didn't hire guys that would coach. He hired old friends. Belichick's going down the same road. Well, that's not actually the road. The road is he thinks he's smarter than everybody. Knight always thought at the end he was smarter than everyone. Well, guess what? Other guys wised up. Belichick thought he was smarter than everybody. We don't need an offensive coordinator, Belichick said. We don't need that. What we need is what I got. Oh, okay. What do you got? You got squat. You got squat. You know what? Here's the deal, Bill. Get yourself an offensive coordinator, and you got a good one. I'm looking it up here. You know what? There may not be a better play caller. You know what I mean? There may not be a better play caller for Bill Belichick than Bill O'Brien. He returns to a job that he had when they won Super Bowls. Now, here's your problem. If you're Bill Belichick, let me ask you a question. You're getting the band together? Louis Armstrong ain't in the band. Louis Armstrong, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't know what he's going to do next year. And let's play Louis Armstrong, a.k.a. Tom Brady. He's not getting Tom Brady back into the fold. Dylan and Ryan, if we can cue up before we go to break the Tom Brady, saying, I don't know what I'm doing. See, he's getting the band back together. He's the Blues Brothers. He's going all around Chicago, but he doesn't have Aretha Franklin. No, he doesn't. It would be like our guy, your guy, Bruce Springsteen, and he doesn't have the big fella back playing the sax. You can bring the band back, but if you don't have the star, it ain't no good. It's like, do you like Van Halen or Van Hagar? I like Van Halen. I like David Lee Roth, that knucklehead. Sammy Hagar, he can't drive 55, all right. But it ain't Van Halen, baby. So he's bringing him back. Tom Brady doesn't know what he's going to do, but good for Bill Belichick. See, here's the deal. Leaders need to adjust. Sometimes you take a swing and that swing doesn't work. So when it doesn't work, what do? You reboot. You reboot, you go get somebody that you can trust. You go get somebody that you want to have in your operation that you know is going to be on the same page as you. And then you take another swing. Good for Bill Belichick. Good for Bill Belichick. All right. Look, when we come back, we got a monster for you. I need to talk some college hoops. This needs to be your college hoop central. We're going to do that with Fran Fraschilla. Understand this. Understand that there are really only two people, me, not you, me, listen to when they speak on hoops. One, Fran Fraschilla. 2, Seth Greenberg. And a third would be Doug Gottlieb. That's about it when they speak on college hoops. We got all these young guys trying to be coaches. We got Billis out there trying to act like a coach. If you haven't been a head coach, I don't want to hear from you. You might. I'm not saying you don't. I'm saying I don't. All right, Dylan, let's hear it when we go to break. Let's hear a little bit from the GOAT on his podcast, Tom Brady.
Tom, you're leaving everybody guessing. You said you'll take your time. Do you have any type of a timetable as to what you might want to do regarding your football career?
Jim, if I knew what I was going to fucking do, I'd have already done it. Okay? I'm taking it a day at a time.
I sense you're antagonized by the question.
You're scratching.
It's only the question that everybody wants to hear.
You're scratchy. I appreciate your asking. Thank you.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking there's going to be practice the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all of this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made. Hey, look, I'm a hard listen. I don't listen to everybody. In fact, I turn most games down. I go back to when I was coaching with Coach Knight. We used to watch games without sound. But when Fran, Seth do games, I watch. I just do, because I like guys that have been head coaches because they understand. Fran Fraschilla, nice enough to join us. I don't think he's in Allen Fieldhouse. I do think that he has thoughts on Kansas, though, big boy.
Yes, I do. I know this team well, Dan. I see them a lot. I watched them last night from the comforts of my home in Colorado Springs. And I'm I think the main thing right now is they're having trouble making shots. The way teams are playing them right now, they're going under all ball screens except for Grady Dick. And as good a year as Jalen Wilson is having, he's inconsistent from the perimeter. Kevin McCullough, the transfer from Texas Tech, is not making shots. DeJuan Harris doesn't look to shoot. He's a facilitator. And so right now, I think the biggest concern is they are not a good outside shooting team, especially when you take away Grady Dick. And it renders them very ineffective. They have nobody who can score in the paint from the post area, so they have to drive it all the time. And teams in the Big 12, once you get to late January, they go to school on what other opponents have done. And they all now know that you go under ball screens on them and don't let them get to the basket if you can help it.
Fran, we saw this last year. I remember when Kentucky went into KU right there, Fog Allen Fieldhouse, and beat the dog out of them on national TV. And the next thing you know, they're running through the tournament. You know, we always want to compare. Does this team have that kind of backside to do the same thing?
Well, I think they do, Dan. I got to tell you, you and I are lucky to when we've done what we've done. We're around great coaches, and you certainly have been around one of the greatest ever. But Bill Self will figure this out. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't tinker with his team to the point where they get back on track. The one difficulty about getting back on track this year is, as good as everybody says the Big 12 is, it's probably even better, not from talent standpoint. There's not a lot of pros in the league, but there is virtually no difference from 1 to 10 in this league. And what do I mean by that? You've got two teams at the bottom of the Big 12 who are now 1 and 13, who only 3 weeks ago were ranked in the top 25. They didn't get markedly worse. They just got into conference play. So the difficulty for Kansas now is, I think, coming up, how about this? They got to go to Kentucky. They got K-State at home, a game they probably will win, as good a season as K-State's having. And then they got to go to Iowa State, a team that was picked 8th in the Big 12, who's now a top 10 team. So Bill Self will figure this out. There's still a lot of talent there, but it's a little different getting the ship straightened out in a year in this league because of the balance of the league. It's incredible.
Yeah, it really is, and it's fun to watch. I mean, you mentioned Kansas State. Hey, I love what the coach said to his fans. We'll give you one court storming, and then we're going to expect to win every night, right?
Well, it's amazing. You know, it's funny. I've been around the Big 12 for nearly 20 years, and I watched when Scott Drew was a, quote, bad coach. And if he was a bad coach, that means Jerome Tang was his bad assistant. You know what I mean? And as I watched Scott Drew actually improve as a coach, which he did, by the way, a Butler University grad, tennis player, and obviously the son of Homer Drew. But when I watched him over the last 10 years, it's remarkable to see a coach improve that way. I would say a guy that kind of comes to mind that way is Jay Wright. Jay got markedly better over the last decade, and the proof's in the pudding. But Scott Drew and Jerome Tang truly became great coaches. And when I went out to Kansas State in October to watch them practice, I didn't know how good they would be. I just knew after 10 minutes they had a vibe in that gym that was going to carry on. And now what happened is we found out that Keontae Johnson is as good as the preseason SEC Player of the Year he was 3 years ago, and that this little Marquise Noel is like an Isaiah Thomas type. Not the Isaiah Thomas from IU, but the little guy that played for the Celtics. And they've got two Big Ten all first team players, and they're probably the surprise of the country.
For people that don't remember, the kid at Kansas State, Deontay Johnson, was the kid that fell out at Florida, right? Passed out onto the court, and now it's a great story. He's back playing.
Yes, and you know, knock on wood and say the prayers that he stays healthy, because if you remember, Baylor had a couple guys, King McClure and then later on Jared Butler, who was an All-American, both had similar heart issues. And just like with Keontae Johnson, Baylor made sure that, and I know Keontae did this with K-State, they went up to the Mayo Clinic. They got all the heart tests done. And He's back on the court playing, and we wish him nothing but the best because he's a monster, man. He's what I call a linebacker, a defense. He's Nick Bosa playing big guard. That's what he is. He's Nick Bosa playing big guard.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Use that. I wore my Harvard shirt because Fran's
Yeah,
son
yeah,
played
baby.
at Harvard. And
Big
yeah.
win over Cornell
And,
Saturday. Big win over Cornell Saturday at home. Yeah, he's glad to be back. He's glad to be back.
It just makes you smarter when you walk around Harvard's campus. Like you know what I mean?
And for the two of us, that's really important, by the way. You know, I leave Harvard after a couple days, and I feel like I can match wits with anybody from an intellectual standpoint. Now, I did go to BC. I went to BC, Brooklyn College. So, I paid a lot less at my BC than they pay at BC in Boston, by the way.
Really?
Yeah. $775 a semester.
College. I
Is
had
that
a
right?
crazy coach that helped me named Jay Perlman.
I know that name.
He was a Brooklyn College. Yeah, he was completely out of his mind, and I loved him. All right, you did on radio the Indiana-Illinois game. Here in Indiana, we're already hanging a sixth banner. We're like, let's go. Woody's been through it. I've ripped him. His daughter ripped me. I don't care. Woody's team, and I give Woody credit, they've kind of come back from the dead here and are playing well, aren't they?
They are, and obviously they were 7-0 when they were full, right? When they were healthy, Dan, with Xavier Johnson and Race Thompson. I went over to Illinois last week and did the game on Westwood One Radio, and I have to tell you honestly, Trace Jackson Davis is as impressive as a player as any guy I've seen this year. I've seen Drew Timme, I've seen UCLA, I've seen Kansas, I've seen. I think most of the best players in the country. Brandon Miller from Alabama is a special freshman. Jaime Jaquez. This little kid, Kendrick Davis, remember him? He's the best point guard in the country, the kid from Memphis. He's a monster, and nobody's really talking about him. But I was so impressed with Trace Jackson Davis and the improvement he's made over 4 years. I'm going to be shocked if he's not an NBA player and in somebody's rotation. Like, he'll go in the second round idiotically the way Jalen Brunson went in the second round. And then all he'll be is like the Cam Johnson kid at the Phoenix Suns, different kind of player, but everybody mocked the Suns for taking him so high. I was impressed with Trace. He's got a good motor. He's got great feet. He's got a lot of touch around the basket. He's got a quick first step. And I was really surprised Illinois didn't double him the way the rest of the Big Ten doubles him because he was like 16 of 19 that night. Unstoppable. I'm impressed with him. I really am. And I think their team is still flawed because there's still a lot of, question about whether they shoot it well enough. But I don't know what Xavier Johnson's status is, but I think at least healthy, they can be as good as anybody in that league except Purdue, who we both know they have the magical formula. You know what the magical formula at Purdue is, Dan? It's called Matt Painter. Matt Painter. That's the magical formula. As good a coach as there is right now in the country.
Let me go to Purdue for a second. I'm watching them play Michigan State, and they've got the ball. They got to go to length of the court. They got 10 seconds. But I'm telling you, Coach, they executed, and I'm sure you saw it. They got the ball to Edey. He just flipped it in. It was incredible, the execution down the stretch. And they're different. They run motion some, but they use a big guy who isn't the, quote, modern big guy. He's the old school big guy, Zach Edey, and he might be player of the year in the country.
Well, I think he's the front runner right now. There's no question. I mean, he's somebody said it. I can't remember who it was. It might have been my friend John Rothstein. But I think he hit it on the head when he said Yao Ming. He has a lot of Yao Ming in him. I mean, and maybe he's not ready for the modern NBA, but I know this. He's the best player in the country, at least from start to finish so far. And the thing you love about Matt Painter, and Bill Self is so good at this too, a couple of years ago when they had Carson Edwards going absolutely crazy, I said to Matt, how do you run offense with a guy who's such an isolation player? And he had a great line, Dan. He said, Well, on one side of the court, we run motion with these four guys. On the other side of the court, we just let him play one-on-one. And the beauty of Matt is, while he's had this reputation, rightfully so, recently of having, Hammonds and Edie and some of the other big guys he's had, I can't remember their names now, but he's had some good
Haas.
Actually, Isaac Haas. Matt fits the talent. He fits his style to his talent in a given year. And right now he's able to get these monstrous big guys, and he's playing through Zach Edey. Last year he had the two guys, the two-headed monster. But if he's got a great guard, he'll play through him too. And you remember how those guys have been running off screens forever, catching, shooting those shots? He'll figure out how to best utilize his talent, and I think that makes him a great coach.
I totally agree. Like, I tease Purdue fans all the time. I say they're like Purdue, it drives them. I say they're like, Lucy holding the football for Charlie Brown. Everything's going good, and then she pulls the football away. And it makes them nuts. But, no, I agree with you. Matt's a terrific coach. What's going on at Kentucky? Kentucky, do they have the ship righted? Where are you at with Cal's team?
Well, I think they've figured out, from what I can tell from a distance, that, the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts. And sometimes you think the parts are better than the parts really are, and they're not. Like they've got some, like Jacob Toppin is a nice player. He was kind of under-recruited. He started his career at Rhode Island. Antonio Reeves came from Illinois State. Severe Wheeler was a transfer. CJ Frederick was a transfer. I don't think their talent is great. I don't know who the pro is on their team. It might be Livingston, the freshman. Cason Wallace is a really nice freshman from Dallas. But what I do think has happened the last couple games is they figured out, like, if we don't play together, and going to Tennessee was a hell of a win. We don't play together, we're not going to get anything done. And I think that they're going to be sneaky inconsistent because a lot of the teams they have coming up in conference play are not very good. The bottom of the SEC is not very good when you look at the top of the league with Tennessee and Alabama. So there's still a lot of wins to be had for Kentucky. I just hope it's not fool's gold going into the NCAA tournament and then they, lose inexplicably to somebody. I do think they figured some things out, and that is we better play together.
The Indiana in me, you just mentioned lose inexplicably, and it was St. Peter's. We don't mention that with Purdue. Purdue's got this exempt status that, they didn't.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's probably because, but I'll tell you, that's probably because Matt makes a big deal about having these under the radar recruits. So, you know what I mean? It's like, I guess in a given year, you don't expect as much from Purdue. Then they're number one in the country, and then they lose inexplicably. You say, well, they don't have any NBA players anyway, so I'm not surprised. Where when Cal does it, he's got 5 high school All-Americans. So Matt gets the pass. He does get the pass.
Right. How good's Houston? How good's Calvin's team?
They're really good, but they're not as good as everybody thought. Like, they're really good in that you can count on them to play hard as anybody. But and they've got a really good freshman. The kid Jerace Walker is really a throwback, old school, tough, hard-nosed kid. And I felt, and I just thought all year, and they're still 18-2, by the way. They haven't fallen off the cliff. I just think that they're not as good. Their talent is not as good as what the record and the ranking is. And I think Kelvin would be the first to tell you, they've got a lot of guys that were under-recruited, and they play their ass off, and they're gonna be in a fist fight with you every night. But I don't think they have the best talent in the country. And I think they came into the season with a little bit of a reputation for being a Kelvin team. And so we're going to make them number 1 or number 2. And they're certainly still in that top 5 range. But I don't think their talent level is as good as – they're the opposite of what I said about Kentucky. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Because I will say this, Dan, when if you do choose to play for Kelvin, you're going to a place where he is going to push you every single day. If you don't like that and you make the decision to go there, it's your fault, not his. So if you go there, you're going to get pushed every day. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on this. All right, I had an epiphany, and I want you to set me straight, okay? Is the West Coast Conference getting a lot better? The coaches, Herb Sendik's doing a hell of a job. I understand it's Gonzaga's league still. We saw him lose at home, but I'm looking at Santa Clara. They're bringing in some coaches in that league.
Well, that's it. This kind of happened in the Big 12 when Bill Self got to Kansas and then Eddie Sutton retired and some coaches left. ADs were smart enough to say, we have to make an investment not in facilities or recruiting budgets. We have to make an investment in coaches who've won big. And for the last decade or so, 6 of the 10 coaches in the Big 12 have been to Final Fours. You look at Porter Moser going to Oklahoma, or what Scott Drew's done, Chris Beard, et cetera. And I think that's happened to a large degree in the WCC. Like you mentioned Herb Sendak. BYU comes into the league. There's a really good young coach at Portland, Shante Leggins. And I think the Lavins at San Diego might not be the best coach ever, but he's got experience of going to the Sweet 16. And the only way to take down the bully, or at least punch the bully in the nose, which is Gonzaga, right, is you better find coaches who are not going to be intimidated by Gonzaga. And Randy Bennett's certainly not intimidated by Gonzaga. He's been in a fist fight with Mark Few for 20 years now, and every now and then he's going to get his nose bloodied. We know that. And some nights he's going to walk home bruised and battered. But there's going to be some nights that he's going to get the best of Mark Few, and you can't be afraid to go toe-to-toe with the bully on the street. And I think there's a bunch of coaches in that league now that are saying the only way for us to improve our program is to go after Gonzaga. And frankly, Dan, they're not as talented, Gonzaga, as teams we've used to seeing at Gonzaga in recent years. And they're still 17-4.
Right. And played a murderous schedule, I mean, it's
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, I have one of my former college roommates is analyst for Tennessee or Texas football, and he's the most popular anchor down in Austin on the NBC affiliate. He's been there 25 years, and he tells me that, boy, a lot of people, particularly in the media and a lot of fans, want Rodney Terry to be the head coach of the Texas Longhorns. From where you're sitting, covering the league, covering all of this, what's going to happen with that job?
He's first of all, he's a good guy, a really good human being, a good coach. Left a head coaching spot, obviously, to go back as the associate head coach. Right now, it's January 22nd, 23rd, 24th. I can't remember. 23rd. He's got a 2-month interview. He's in the middle of a 2-month interview, Dan, and I think he's 9-2. And someone asked me, would Chris Beard be 10-1 or 11-0? Probably not. Probably be 9-2. And so what I think is Rodney, and by the way, he's got 2 aces in the hole, okay? 2 of the top 25 players in the country who've signed next year. And I wouldn't make a decision based on what a recruit says. But he does have 2 kids who say, I'm still going to Texas if Rodney's the head coach. Now, the reality is the athletic director who worked at Arizona when Lute Olson was going strong and hired Jamie Dixon at TCU, he wants to hire a big name. There's no question. And he would love to do it, but I think he would trade off hiring Rodney Terry if Rodney got him to a Final Four than hiring some big name coach who may or may not get the job done. So Rodney is in the middle of a 2-month interview. And at worst, Rodney's going to be a head coach somewhere next year because he's doing a nice job. I will tell you this, my Texas friends don't like this. It is not a basketball job. And everybody who's down there knows it. It's a Longhorn job. When you win, they love you. They love the Longhorns. And they don't know why an inbounds play works, okay? No, unlike Indiana Purdue fans, they can tell you why the zone offense is terrible. They can't do that at Texas. They know you shouldn't be throwing deep on cover 2, but they don't know basketball, okay? And so if you take that job as the big name, Nate Oates or John Calipari, you are going to a place where you are number 2 forever. Forever. And that's okay. Chris Holtman is fine at Ohio State. Rick Barnes is fine at Tennessee. Billy Donovan was fine at Florida. When I coached at Ohio State, nothing better than a Saturday afternoon in the fall, taking those recruits to a football game. And if the next coach can accept that, and you can accept being paid less money than the football coach, great job, because not a lot of people care. In the meantime, Rodney's got a 2-month job interview.
You know, going back, I remember when the Final Four was in Indy, Mark Few and I were having a beer, and I think they had just hired Calvin, and I said, you know, you always wanted to be a high school coach. I said, you ever imagine you turned down millions to be the head coach at Indiana? And you know what he said? He goes, no, I never imagined it, but you people are crazy. He goes, I don't need this aggravation. He goes, look around. And then Sampson, when I worked for him, Fran, he was telling me, he goes, look, the Oklahoma is an unbelievably great basketball job because you got every facility you want, great recruiting base, and nobody cares until after football. He goes, at Indiana, we got 18,000 for Chicago State on a Sunday in November. So I get what you're saying. Speaking of that, what happens with Chris Beard? Walk me through his future as it pertains to basketball.
Well, listen, I watched who is it? UFC. What's his name? White? Dana White? What's his name? Who's the guy?
Yeah, Dana
right?
White,
What he did was terrible. Obviously, we don't condone that in our society right now. But I also thought, and I hope it came from the heart, right? He got up there and owned it, and said it's going to affect him the rest of his life. Obviously, he's going to live with what happened to him. But I was impressed, at least from the standpoint of him owning what happened, And I think with Chris Beard at some point in time has just got to make himself, if he wants to coach again, I think he's got to come out in public and explain what happened and hopefully move on from this. And he's not going to get hired by 80% of the athletic directors in schools out there. But I think somebody will take a chance on him if he's contrite and, tells us what happened. And I think we're a fairly forgiving society for the most part. It's probably changed in recent years because of the idiots on Twitter and the media. But for the most part, I think that the average American is a forgiving person, And if Chris will come out of, I don't want to say hiding, but because that's not right, but at the right time and explains what happened and said, I'm really sorry for what happened. It's terrible. My girlfriend and I have talked about it. We've made up. We've spent a lot of time together getting right. And if there's any way I can ever coach again, I'll be a better person. I think that's the world we live in America. And if that happens, he has a chance to coach again. But it's going to take, it's going to take him first, and then a school, a president, athletic director that said, hey, we've talked to him and we feel like he could win us games because let's be honest, he's a great coach. But he's got to get right with himself and I think the public when he comes out and explains what happened.
People don't understand, but my man here knows more about the modern world of politics than anybody you're going to see on any of the networks. I'm not going to put him in a bad spot because, well, sometimes the people you work for don't want people. But I do want to ask you, as a political science major, I do want to ask you, what was your take on the uproar over Tony Dungy?
Well, you probably know Tony from your days in Indianapolis. Let's get it out there. First of all, he said something about gender identification, which he apologized for quickly. And I think anybody who knows, if you don't think Tony Dungy is a sincere human being, then you don't know people, And he made a mistake, and he owned it, and he came out and apologized for it. And I think it was sincere from everything we know about Tony Dungy. And here's what I would say, Dan. You live in a football NFL market, okay? There are probably playing in the NFL. And by a byproduct of that is coaching the NFL. That's probably the hardest thing to do in sports. We saw it with DeMar Hamlin. You literally on every single play put your life on the line. And that's really not an exaggeration. You know, your career and your health is in jeopardy on every single play in the NFL. And so those guys, the NFL guys I've met, are probably some of the most religious people that I know. Many of these young people who play in the NFL are from the South. The South is still a place where faith and religion is critical to their lifestyle. And I think Tony, let's face it, the reason people attack Tony is because he's a man of God. Okay? That's the main reason. Okay? What he said was unfortunate. He took it back. But we all know that our society right now, there's a segment that if you profess your faith, you can be attacked. And that's the only reason he was attacked. I would say this about Tony Dungy, Dan. I don't think Tony Dungy, God willing, is going to be around another 20, 30 years on this earth. I don't think Tony Dungy for 1 second is worried about critics, because I think Tony Dungy's got a, let's say, there are more important things that are going on with Tony Dungy, and he lives his life that way. And so we all know the reason he was attacked is because he's a man of faith, period, end of sentence.
I would add he's not liberal. I would add he's a little conservative too, and that
I can't say that. I can't say that.
I know. I said that. Daniel J. Dakich said that.
Yeah.
Fran Fraschilla just talked about him as a man of faith, Seisler and Schiffman. Let's understand.
Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. Hey,
I'm defending.
I'm breaking down Kansas. You know what's funny? I will say this. I have a lot of friends. I love politics. I love history. You know, like you mentioned, I studied American military history. You want to talk about General Ulysses S. Grant? We can talk for hours at a time. You know, born in Georgetown, Ohio, right on the banks of the Ohio River outside of Cincinnati, and talk about how he won the Battle of Vicksburg. But I love politics. I love talking to my friends from every spectrum of politics. I love the pursuit of why one policy initiative, it might be better than another, and then you can change my opinion. I'm good with that, but I can't do that anymore unless I just can't, because you're branded one way or another, and it's so sad that I can't have the conversations I used to have. I'll give you a great example, right? I loved Sam Donaldson, okay? When Sam Donaldson would get up and torture a president, whether it was Reagan or H.W. Bush or maybe Jimmy Carter before that, that's great theater. If you do it now, you're a partisan. You know, you can't even practice. Every now and then I see like a hint of journalism out there, and it's really cool, you know. And when you get up and ask tough questions of a politician, I think that's cool. And yet you don't see that happening anymore. It's just so sad. Where's Sam Donaldson when we need him?
Hey, Fran, I've said for years, people say, well, you know, your dream job was to be the Indiana head coach. No, my dream job was to play shortstop for the Chicago Cubs, number one. My second dream job was to be, and still is, I would leave any job I ever had to be press secretary for the President of the United States. I think I've always wanted to, and I had a day set up to go shadow, and it ended up getting canceled. But I'm with you. I'm a kid that read Mike Royko when I was 10 years old in the Chicago Tribune. I love this stuff. And, Dan, it's just sad that you can't. Go ahead.
You know, Mike Royko, man, like I came to Mike Royko like in my like early 20s. You know, when you go to Ohio and you're driving, you know, go up to Chicago. Remember, I used to buy every freaking newspaper that was out there. If I went through, I'll tell you, like if I went through Chicago, man, I got the Trib and the Sun-Times, and it might be a local paper in like Arlington Heights had a paper. I'd grab them, put them on the plane with me. And you know, the great George Raveling used to subscribe to like 50 newspapers. This is before the internet. He would clip out the articles that he wanted to send to his friends. And every couple weeks, we get a packet of articles. And it wasn't just sports and basketball. It'd be a Mike Royko article. It'd be an article from somebody from the LA Times. We gobbled that stuff up. And we didn't even know what we were politically, honestly. We didn't really know back then. We just knew like that we wanted to soak up information and make decisions for ourselves. And nowadays we have people jamming stuff down our throat because they're not journalists, they're advocates. And it bothers me because I couldn't even tell you what Mike Royko was, whether he was liberal or conservative. I couldn't. You know, the great Dick Young, who wrote for the Daily News, Mike Lupica back at the time. So anyway, it's sad, but I stay in my playground of life, which is college basketball. And if you get me started over a beer or iced tea, I can dissect the 1980 election between Carter and Reagan, okay? Because I voted for one the first time and I voted for the other the second time. I did. And I didn't know what I was doing either time.
Carter I guess Nixon was the first guy I paid attention to when he got fired, but Carter was the first guy that, and I'm going to let you go, but he was the first guy, and I was, I don't know, 15 or 16. Man, he was the first guy. His policies affected my family because my mother and father every other week would get paid as teachers, and that every other week we got McDonald's. And it was a big deal. And when Carter was in there, we couldn't afford McDonald's. We had to buy gas, and that pissed me off.
Oh, hey, before we go, I want to tell you, if you like the history of the 70s, 60s, and 70s, buy the book by Dwight Chapin. Okay, Dwight Chapin was the first White House person to be indicted in Watergate. Okay, he was with Nixon from the very beginning until the end, and he just retired as an advertising executive in New York City. He the last 40 years of his life, he was under the radar. But Dwight Chapin's he'll tell you everything about Richard Nixon. Now, if you don't know anything about history and politics, and Richard Nixon is a bad guy, and if you love Richard Nixon, he's a great guy. This book tells you everything about the 60s and 70s in America. It also tells you about Watergate and how that was kind of somewhat contrived. And it doesn't hide the warts Nixon had, but it's an amazing history of the 60s and 70s, especially the presidency. I would urge you to read Dwight Chapin's book.
I'm going to do it. I'm in the middle of Five Presidents. I'm in the middle of a book called Five Presidents, which is a Secret Service guy retired and wrote about his experiences with Eisenhower and others. I got to run. Franny, great stuff.
See ya.
I don't think we got anybody in trouble. Thank you, my friend.
I'll tell you next week.
Okay. I love that, man. That was fun. Now, that's why you come to this show. He was so absolutely great. Nobody knows hoops more than Fran. I'm telling you, when he does a game, I turn the volume up. I can't take all these former players that don't know their backside from third base. You put Fran on a game, the volume is up. It's just the way it is. Our friend Armando Segura is going to join us. When we come back, we got to get into some NFL, baby. Let's go. We'll be right back.
As we move past the college football regular season, the postseason, and the playoff championship game, is there, are we going to see, in your opinion, are we going to see the same storyline going into next year? Do you think with the same teams? And I'm talking, Bama, Georgia, two teams that are looking for a new quarterback, by the way, in Bama and Georgia. Ohio State is as well. Michigan's going to return J.J. McCarthy. Harbaugh, this NFL nonsense saga comes to an end for another year yesterday. Do you think it's trending towards where, with the playoff expansion coming up too, we got our 4 or 5 teams, you know what I mean? Maybe Clemson gets back in there, there's a few other, but do you feel like Kirby Smart has set himself up now where he's running a dynasty at Alabama? At Georgia, along with Nick Saban trying to run his own dynasty at Alabama.
Yeah, I think that was probably the takeaway that everybody had. Every podcast that I listened to after the game, every column that I read, and certainly what I wrote and what I said on my own show, I think we're there, man. And, I think what stands out is, one, it goes like, I think it's easy. And I was one of the people that was critical of Kirby Smart pre-national championship game last year, but they've been elite for about 5-6 years now. I looked up the stat. I can't remember it. I think it was since that title game run in 2018. outside of the COVID year, I think they've won at least 11 games every year. Now, they couldn't get over the hump, and part of it was they ran into really good teams. They ran into a historically great LSU team in 2019. 2018, they obviously had Bama on the ropes in the SEC title game. And so now they're there, but they're there with the confidence of knowing that they can beat anybody in college football.
That was a good time with Fran Fraschilla. Now we're with the smartest man in NFL media, our good friend Armando Salguera. All right, here is the Dallas Cowboys tweet about Dak Prescott. I ripped it. What do you think about it? We're going to show it to you right now. Let's see it. What do you think about this, Armando?
Oh my God. They just threw their own quarterback under the bus. Did they? I mean, they just, that's one of those, they threw him under the bus, ran over him, backed up, and kind of bumped again. Oh, that was Dak. Oh, well, let's go forward. Boom, boom, boom. All right. Oh, my Lord.
Is that unbelievable? Hey, have you ever seen that from the NFL? That's their official site. That's not some guy, right? That's their official. Have you ever seen that before?
Well, I would have to say to you, that's probably some 20-something who is, a very talented internet geek, but probably not well versed in innuendo and life and what things actually mean and the repercussions of it. I wouldn't be surprised if that tweet, one, doesn't get a reaction from Dak himself, and two, isn't long for Twitter. I think that tweet comes down fairly quickly if the Cowboys are on their game.
I agree. I completely agree. You were in Buffalo in the snow. You saw the offensive line basically snowplow the Buffalo Bills. Let me start with the Bills side of it. What did you see out of the Bills that they didn't quite have in this game?
Well, they didn't have Von Miller, so that's number one. And obviously that affected them against, an elite passer. That would have been a huge, huge advantage for the Bills had they had the guy that they paid, mega millions to. Number two, their offense has regressed. There's no other way to say it. It didn't look good against Miami the week before. The Dolphins weren't able to capitalize because they basically were playing with, their third string quarterback, and yet they still scored like 30 points on the Bills, 7 of which was given up by the offense, the Buffalo offense. And then, this week, Lou Anarumo, who is the defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals and should be at least being interviewed in this coaching cycle for a head coach job, he just shut down. He decided, okay, so you're going to go with Stephon Diggs. We're going to make the other guys beat us. And even if Stephon Diggs gets his, and he did, he had 10 catches, we're going to limit him. We're not going to let him get behind us. We're not going to let him make explosive or dynamic plays. And so he had like 10 catches for like 30 yards, which is like crazy. 10 targets for like 30 yards. And so the Bills didn't have a plan B. Josh Allen couldn't put the team on his shoulder and just will them to victory. When you get to this stage, Dan, the other guys are good too. And the Buffalo Bills have been winning on the fact that They have a very elite quarterback. The problem is, and now they've probably realized it, when you get to the division round, the other team typically also has an elite quarterback, so they can match you, and their defense is pretty good. And so now what we have with Josh Allen is a guy who is great, but can't get out of the division round. He hasn't even been to an AFC championship game.
What'd you think the other side? What'd you think of the Bengals? You came on when we were off the air and said, "Way, pretty good, huh?"
Yeah, they, as I wrote on OutKick.com, they're not the plucky, nice, surprising Bengals anymore. That's a monster team. They are monsters. They come at you with an elite quarterback who is arguably, he's got the, what is the word? I think Co-Jones is the way some people pronounce it, not Hispanic people. Anyway, so he's got, the contents in the where they need to be, and he overcomes lack of offensive line. He overcomes a million things, long yardage situations. He has great confidence. He has great instinct, and he has playmakers all around that just light up scoreboards. That combination with Jamar Chase, I find that, it's like unstoppable. They know where they're going to be. Jamar Chase can be covered, and still Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are so locked in, they will find that closed window, that very tight window, and get the ball there, and Jamar Chase will make the play. And on defense, going back to Anarumo, he has great game plans, and when they go south, which sometimes they do, he has great adjustments. And the Bills just couldn't understand what was coming. They had late corner blitzes. They had games up front. They had, blitzes from the middle. As Deion Dawkins said afterwards, we had our head on a swivel and we didn't know what was coming next.
I think all things being equal, and I know that Kyle Shanahan's a great coach and they've got a great defense, but how much talk do we do, you, me, everybody, about the need for a quarterback? I got to tell you, I think Brock Purdy, what he's been able to do is the best story in sports right now, from where he was to where he is now. Armando, I could be crazy, but I don't think people giving him enough credit.
No, let's give him credit right here, because he's been amazing.
There you go.
He's been everything that the last pick of the draft probably shouldn't be as a quarterback in his rookie year. He has been just on it. And when he hasn't been on it, which has been rare occasions, they have a defense that just gobbles people up. They have the best defense in the playoffs right now. There is no question about it. It's the reason that defensive coordinator DeMeco Ryans is going to get a head coaching job this cycle. And there is this. You mentioned that we talk about quarterbacks, and a lot of teams are paying very high prices for those quarterbacks. The Green Bay Packers are paying $50 million a year for their quarterback, and so it's important. The 49ers are paying, $700,000 for their quarterback this year. But here's the difference. The difference is you don't have to pay like he's worth, a mint. But if you don't, you still need him to play like he's worth a mint. He could be a surprise, performance guy. He can come out of the blue. He can, be a no-name. But at the end of the day, he needs to perform at a very high level. And Brock Purdy, come out of the blue, last pick in the draft, not a expectation, big surprise, but he's playing every bit the part of an elite quarterback.
Yeah, and you know what else? I look and I've been watching for the last couple of days. I don't know if there was a more impressive performance than what the Philadelphia Eagles did to the Giants. Same kind of deal. I'm seeing all this stuff about Burrow, which it should, and Mahomes, which is ankle. But damn, how good was Philadelphia?
No, they're probably the most complete and talented team in the playoffs right now. Arguably, they're the most complete and talented team in the NFL because they've got talent everywhere and people keep trading good players to them. I don't know why. But here's the problem for the Eagles, okay? The Eagles have stolen a page from the 1990s Cowboys where they gathered so much talent that they didn't have to out-scheme. They didn't have to, gimmick play. They didn't have to do any of that. They were easy to figure out, but impossible to stop or contain because their guys were just so good. The small problem with that for the Eagles is it's worked so far. They've been great at it so far, but they're easy to figure out, especially on offense. And eventually, somebody who is just as talented on defense, maybe the 49ers, can match up with them, figure them out, and then now it's no longer you're out scheming me or you're tricking me or you're surprising me. Now it's your talent against my talent. Let's see who's better. And that's what I'm really interested to see this weekend in that game between the 49ers and the Eagles. It's a matchup of talent, pure and simple.
Last thing before I let you go, I know you're probably going to have to give up a first-round draft choice, blah, 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 blah. Where does Sean Payton end up?
Yeah, my guess is he goes to Denver. And the reason I say that is they have a ready-made quarterback who needs some help and is eager to be helped. And Sean Payton has the reputation for being able to do that. You've got an ownership group that could buy California if they wanted to. And so Sean Payton likes the fact that they're going to pay him a lot of money. And they have a draft pick that they can give up. And they feel like with that draft pick, they still can compete in the draft. They still have a very good playoff caliber defense. And now they've got their offensive guru coach who can fix the most important player in the franchise, and that's Russell Wilson.
What would have been the odds, my friend, of saying NFC Championship game, Brock Purdy against Jalen Hurts 2 years ago, 3 years ago? What would have been like 1,000,000 to 1?
2 years ago, in August. In August, right. You had said that to me.
Right.
Damn. If you would have said that to me in August, hey, Armando, in January, we're going to see Brock Purdy versus Jalen Hurts in the NFC Championship game, I would have said, Dan, I love you, brother. Stick to basketball, okay?
Right.
Talk politics. Discuss your Harvard T-shirts if you want to. Stay away from the NFL. You don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
And yet, here we are.
I was giving Hurts at least a little bit. I was giving Hurts credit in that by going backwards. But you're so right. Mattress Mac would have made a fortune on that bad boy betting something like that. All right, last thing. So you like who? Do you like San Francisco? Who you like? Both games.
Right. So let me say something before I get to that. The Eagles were surprised. Because in August, I was there for some of their training camp practices, and I was told we've surrounded our quarterback with a lot of talent, and if he doesn't get it done, he's out after this year. So they were not certain about Jalen Hurts. They themselves. Having said that, San Francisco and Philadelphia, look, man, I'm going to ride the great story. I'm going to ride Brock Purdy. Because I like Cinderella. She looks good to me. And I like, the San Francisco 49ers in that game. Defense wins championships. As far as Kansas City against Cincinnati, we talked about how the Bengals are a monster team, and Patrick Mahomes is gonna play, but he does have an ankle sprain. I like the Bengals. They have the healthy quarterback, they have better playmakers, and their offensive line might get Jonah Williams back. I'm not sure, but we'll see.
All right, there you go. The gospel, according to Armando. Thank you, my friend. Great stuff.
All right, Dan. Love you, man.
Love you too. That is our friend Armando Segura. Look, I'm going to wait. I'm going to see how the ankle progresses. But hard to argue with what he just said right there, at least in my little world. I think that what Armando said makes sense. But man, is this a great story or what with Brock Purdy? All right, you know what time it is. It is time for Who's Our Woke-A-Dope today. Oh my God. Canadians told to have 2 drinks a week as crack is decriminalized. Oh my God. What do we do? Like, I don't even know how to respond to that, Dylan and Ryan. Like, we're going to make guidelines on alcohol, yet we're going to decriminalize crack. Let me ask you a question. Other than the crazy crime stuff, have you ever or lately walked down the streets of Chicago? Smells like a freaking, I don't know, Amsterdam red light district. Everybody's smoking weed. Like, when did we give in to this? When did we give in to crack? Crack! I don't get it. I got to tell you, I agree with you, Marby Dog. Trudeau is truly an awful human being. Michael Gordon says, crack online. What about pure Coke? He just wants pure Coke. He just wants the coca plant cure. Crack only? Oh, crack only, not online. I'm reading from the YouTube chat, which is always popping. Look, we can go get crack. Like, what in the Sam and Henry are we doing in this world? I would love an explanation. Dan, weed is not crack. No, but it ain't good for you. And it ain't good for our society, and I don't give a damn what the tree huggers say. There's all kind of studies coming out now about how weed is not nearly as good as what the crazy people are saying. People's Verse Radio 317. All right. Yeah, I'm going to listen to you. Man, I'm with Mike Cole. Why can't people handle life straight? Like, hey, look, I'll be honest with you. I like a nice glass of wine. I like running around all day doing whatever it is that I do. And then at night, look, I'll have a sit. Lee and I are watching the mayor of Kingstown, and we'll grab a glass of wine. I'm not waking up in the morning going, oh, man, I got to smoke weed. Thank God Trudeau made crack legal so that I can go run around and light up a freaking spoon and snort it or shoot it or whatever. People are nuts. Thank goodness IU basketball players never did drugs. I didn't. I can't speak for anybody, Fred, and that's 40 years ago. Like, it amazes me that people like this guy Fred are like, well, I never did drugs. I never smoked weed. I never did nothing. I had a cookie one time 2 years ago in Portland. Amazing IU player. I don't know about IU players. I know about me and Uwe. Those are the guys that I roomed with. I can tell you about most of them, but I've always said, when that front door closes, boom. I'm just telling you. Marby Dog supports Trudeau and Biden at the bottom of the ocean. That seems harsh. Guys always say, well, thank God. I was an IU band. I want you to think about this. 1985 is when I graduated. That's 15 plus 23. That's 38 years ago. And this idiot, IU basketball players never did crack. IU basketball players, I don't give a damn. That's 38 years ago. I've raised kids. I've made millions. I've helped people. I've done a million things. Big deal. I went for 4 years to a college. But people lose their mind. Well, you know, I was in class with Stu Robinson. Who cares? It's 40 years ago. You and Uwe
And Alford and Kevin Custer were clean. Oh, okay, Fred. People are idiots. I mean, Stone. This guy says, smoked pot as a teenager, no big deal, grew up, moved on. Right. That's what you do. You move on. I got people that come at me and say, well, you know, Dakich, I didn't see you criticizing Trump the way you criticized Biden. Newsflash, I was working at ESPN, as you heard Fran said. Middle-aged white dudes, we ain't allowed to talk politics. Only the clowns get to talk politics like Jalen Rose. Me, not allowed. Everybody else, allowed. I mean, you look at the people, Maya Kimes, Dan Lebitard, the clowns, they were allowed to talk politics. Me, I wasn't allowed to. One political post and I'd have been in Norby Williamson's office and my kids couldn't have gone to college. I got dudes saying, well, you know, I don't see you protesting Trump like you do Biden. A little different working for OutKick. Speaking of OutKick, we just continue to grow. And I got to go potty, so I'm going to end this a little bit short. Thanks to everybody that's on the YouTube chat. Thanks to everybody, Ryan and Dylan and Davey and Aaron and Chuck and Corey and Haley. But I got to go to the bathroom. See ya.